Eegah is a 1962 production that is credited to Nicholas Merriweather, though the actual history of this film's production is a little bit more muddied, with production, direction and part of the writing credit going to an Arch Hall Sr. Arch Hall Sr. was a B-movie filmmaker whose most notable credit I could find was a partial writing credit on the 1970s schlock horror film The Corpse Grinders. Hall Sr. was quite well known for spending a chunk of his career producing and directing films that acted as a vehicle for his son, actor and musician Arch Hall Jr. This script was also partially written by Bob Whaling, who had a reasonable screenwriting history, having scored a writing gig on a couple of the lesser-known Disney films, and also having been the co-creator for one of the original Zorro films. Eegah stars Arch Hall Jr. as Tom, a gas station attendant who enjoys the simpler things in life. In particular, going to have lunch with his girlfriend Roxy, played by Marilyn Manning. One night after bikini shopping, Roxy is driving home when she's forced to stop her car as a giant caveman emerges out of the desert and attempts to take her with him. Tom rushes to her aid, though he doesn't actually see the caveman, and after much discussion with her father, played by Arch Hall Sr., and some possible evidence in the form of a giant footprint, they decide to go out to the desert to see if they can find this giant caveman. When I talk about films, I like to try and give enough detail on a production that will allow you to get a flavour for it, but not so much detail that I end up spoiling the experience for the viewer. Eegah is one of those rare films that's so basic on almost every level that I can't really talk about it to any extent without giving too much away or spoiling bits of it. It genuinely feels like the dialogue was written for children, with back and forth arguing that wouldn't be amiss on a playground and conversations that just sort of drift in and out of life.
Look at the size of that. It must have been made by...
Say it.
A giant.
What did I tell you? And that's for finding it.
I'll find the big boy himself for you if you feel like that.
He left the road right here. Watch out for snakes.
Ooh!
Better go back to the car.
No! He's my giant.
Holy cow, he was standing right here watching us. And then he turned and took off her.
Shadow Mountain. Do you suppose that's where he lives?
It's possible. That would account for his never having been seen before.
It's too bad we didn't bring the Doom Buggy. We'd go after him.
What for?
To get some pictures. Maybe even to bring him back. A lot of people aren't going to believe this giant jazz.
These aren't helped by padded sequences that do just go on and on and on. Starting at the top, the acting is rotten. Not bad, actually festering. With not one performance pointing anywhere near believable in the slightest, and for the most part it's unintentionally laughably bad. Eegah the Caveman is the only one who seems to be putting in any effort, and after a quick Google search I found out he was played by Richard Kiel, who you may probably know best as playing Jaws in the James Bond films. Eegah is a mute for the most part, who apart from saying Eegah and grumbling a bit, has no main dialogue. And he's the best performance in this film. The direction is point and go, pretty much straight out of the same book as Manos The Hands of Fate, only Manos comparatively seems more competent, albeit smaller budgeted. This film has quite a few expensive-ish looking sequences, such as the helicopter scenes or the sequences involving the Dune buggy. But whereas these are covered from a million different angles and the editing makes sure you see every single one of them, The entire rest of the film feels quite literally like they just set a camera up, took the lens cap off, and started without any consideration of where it was pointing or what it was supposed to be capturing. This film also holds the title for me as one of the worst day-for-night attempts I've ever seen in a film. It was absolutely ridiculous. When I can say that honestly Manos has better direction than this film, you know you're in for something unique. I'd be half tempted to say the cinematography isn't as good as Manos either, with absolutely lazy shots, no mixture of shot types, no consideration for how scenes should transition, and most scenes effectively shot for coverage rather than focusing in on showing story elements rather than explaining them. The soundtrack sounds like it was recorded at a grade 1 guitar recital and recorded in a briefcase submerged in a tank of water. It's terribly muffled, stuttering and totally unsuitable tonally for the film. Tom is a musician in a band in this film, and he has several song moments, effectively making this film a sort of musical. None of his performances are memorable, and the remaining soundtrack is beyond generic. Large swathes of this film don't even have incidental music, which adds a weird silence to proceedings that just further makes this experience very uncomfortable. This whole film seems to settle into a very odd and uncomfortable place after about half an hour or so, and it never really comes out from there. It's not so bad as to be radioactive, but it's bad enough that I felt compelled to sit through the whole thing just to see how much further down the rabbit hole it would go. There are even a few shot transitions that imply Roxy has sex with Eegah, and a relationship in this film with her father is a little bit too comfortable, if you get my drift. Tom looks otherworldly, and while I don't like to level personal remarks to actors, in this film he looks like a waxwork of Eddie Cochran and a Leonian from Doctor Who. None of these actors feel like real people, none of these scenarios feel like real scenarios. All the props, including the dead bodies, are made out of foam, and really just don't look right. The soundtrack's just the right level of off to be discomforting. It doesn't feel like it's been shot by someone with industry experience charting back almost 30 years at this point. And despite what I've just said above, I think it should be seen. This film may be odd, lumpy, and deeply unsatisfying, full of unnecessary padding and written for 5-year-olds, but you do want to watch this film. And if you're of the right mentality, I'm sure what I've shown you so far will be more than enough to convince you to go and look it up. I recommend you watch this film in the company of a group of very drunk friends who can appreciate good, bad or bewildering cinema. It makes the perfect background party film or an end-of-the-night type film. Watching it sober is torture, watching it tipsy is a joy. Eegah is a public domain film, and as a result it's been released multiple times on multiple formats by multiple companies over the years. My release came from Treeline Films' Sci-Fi Classics 50 movie pack. The transfer is a VHS copy, but other than it being a little bit washed out, it's actually surprisingly high quality, with only a couple of tape faults present that I spotted and a good stable picture quality through the rest. The set's also quite cheap at the time of recording, even though it's out of print, so in terms of value for money, I'd recommend looking it up. Eegah has been cited over the years by many critics as one of the worst films ever produced, but having seen it now, I don't honestly know if I can say it is. From a technical level, I would say absolutely this film is one of the worst I've ever seen. Every level of its execution is the closest thing I've seen to a failure in my film-going experience. It barely manages to get anything right. But its odd balance of failure made me warm to this film in a way. It's entertaining because of the fact that it comes across almost as if aliens were trying to approximate how human films are made. And as a result, it's almost hypnotising to watch. Because of this, I can't recommend checking this film out for being in any way good. But if you stumble on this film going cheap, or you're legless and need something to help ease you into winding down for the night, I'd say give Eegah a chance. It's not for everyone, but it might just be for you.